So let my life be the proof of your love. Let my love look like you and what you made.
Tonight we're going to be covering this characteristics of God, that He is provider. That He is provider. Page 60 in your booklet, if you have a booklet. But I want to start by pointing out that what I'm going to be going over is how and what He provides. How and what He provides. Those are the key questions about God's provisions as I go through it tonight. And obviously it's not going to be exhaustive. This is just very, very abbreviated, right? And there's no way that in one message you can cover that God is provider. How, remember there was two questions, how and what. The way I'm using it is that the how points to the means. Exactly what is it that He uses. And the what points to what's most important. The non-physical. And you and I, sometimes we lose sight of that. It's so easy to stick with the physical. I need more physical money. I need a physical person. I need physical everything. We stick with that, right? Last Saturday I lost my phone and I thought I was going to die. Like, no. But we're so used to the physical. And it's not the most important. Though it feels like that. What's non-physical is what's most important. What's non-physical? What is the non-physical? The soul, the spirit, our emotions, abstract things like righteousness and forgiveness is not physical, but yet it's most basic, most important. You know, and life shows it. People can be very, very wealthy, and yet they go for divorce. Why? Because the husband is preoccupied, or the woman has found someone else, and here we go. Money is not the issue. It's the non-physical things. And when people come to breathe their last, when we die, we come to that realization. You can have $1 trillion. It won't matter a bit. It's the non-physical things. And so as we go through the fact that God is provider, He does provide all, what we need physically. But there's something much more fundamental, and that's the non-physical. So you'll see this in the verses that we cover. So the fact that God is provider. We start off, and I quote this lengthy passage in Genesis chapter 22. Genesis 22, starting in verse 11 through 14. This is when Abraham was being asked to sacrifice his son, kill his son, because God had said that. To sacrifice his son, like, what? And what we find is that Abraham was willing to let go of his son physically and sacrifice him. And God says, no, He stopped him. And so we're going to see from the beginning how God provided, right? And what He provided here is both physical and non-physical. And this is the story. It's a very, very moving story. I remember when I became a Christian and I first read these movies, I wept and I wept as Abraham was going up the mountain. And he knew, and his son Isaac didn't know. And his son Isaac asked him, Dad, we have the fire, we have the wood, but where's the sacrifice? Oh, being the father, how are you answer that? And Abraham said, God will provide. Wow, wow. And so we pick it up, and this is the story. And so Genesis chapter 22, verse 11. This is from the King James Bible. And the angel of the Lord called unto him out of heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here I am. And he said, Let not thine hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him. For I know that thou fearest God, seeing that thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, from me. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him up for a burnt offering in the stead of his son. And Abraham called the name of that place Jehovah Jireh, as it is said to this day, in the mount of the Lord it shall be seen. Jehovah Jireh is, the Lord will see or provide. So here, in our greatest test, God provides what is needed. And you and I are going to go through tests, heavy tests. If you haven't already, you probably will. And the tests are designed so that we are drawn near to God, and we get to know the fact that He really, really does provide what we need. As long as we're not in crisis, as long as we're doing fine, I really don't get to know God very well. But we go through tests in life. And when we cry out to Him, really cry out to Him, He meets our needs. When we are obeying Him, in spite of the fact that I may be doing better if I don't obey Him, I may be having more fun if I don't obey Him. But if I say, no, I'm going to obey Him, and we come through tremendous tests in life, we lose a job, we lose a loved one, we lose, I don't know what. But we're holding on to God. God will provide for what is really, really needed. Here, what did He provide? A ram, right? But the ram also was a sacrifice, a blood sacrifice, showing that Abraham really trusted God. You see, and that's the non-physical part. To be able to trust God, that is so profound and needed in all of life. But you have this story here, and God provided a ram when Abraham was going to obey God by sacrificing his son. 1 Kings 17, verse 1 through 9, this is Elijah, Tishbite. He was a prophet, and I want you to know it again, how God provides. How God provides. The first was a ram, but also the what. Really the deeper thing is a sacrifice that makes that relationship with God, right? It deepens that relationship with God between Abraham and God and so forth. That's the deeper what. But here is different in 1 Kings chapter 17. Now Elijah the Tishbite, who was of the settlers of Gilead, said to Ahab. Ahab was the king. He was like a spoiled little brat, King Ahab. Jezebel was his wife, and she was a beast of a woman. Woo! Man! But Ahab was just a wet noodle. So he said to Elijah, and God was disciplining the whole, Ahab. And so through Elijah, he's communicating to Ahab, as the Lord, the God of Israel lives, before whom I stand, this is Elijah talking, surely there shall be neither dew nor rain these years except by my word. And the word of the Lord came to him saying, go away. That is, now God talks to Elijah. Go away from here and turn eastward and hide yourself by the brook Cherith, which is east of Jordan. And it shall be that you shall drink of the brook, and I have commanded the ravens, birds, the ravens to provide for you there. So he went and did according to the word of the Lord. For he went and lived by the brook Cherith, which is east of Jordan. And the ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning, and bread and meat in the evening. Talk about room service, huh? Wow. And he would drink from the brook. And it happened after a while that the brook dried up, because there was no rain in the land. Then the word of the Lord came to him, saying, arise, go to Zarephath, which belonged to Sidon, and stay there. And behold, I have commanded a widow there to provide for you. Wow. Birds and a widow. God can and will provide through anything or anyone. Are we not concerned so much of the time about provisions in life? And we think it's got to be this way. And God says, no, not necessarily. Provides through animals, a ram for Abraham, birds for Elijah, and then a widow. Widows usually don't have much that they can offer. Use a widow to provide for you. That's most odd. But again, we learn God is a provider. Nehemiah 9:15, thou didst provide bread from heaven. This is Nehemiah now rehearsing what God did with the Israelites when he took them out of Egypt, and then they were in the wilderness and they started complaining, and he says, you provide bread from heaven for them for their hunger, and this bring water from a rock, okay, for them for their thirst. And thou didst tell them to enter in order to possess the land which thou didst swear to give to them. Okay. Meat from heaven and water from a rock. That's God. That's God. See, God is our provider. And he is all powerful. He can provide in many. Now it's not even animals, for heaven's sakes. Right? From a rock. He provides water. And if we think about it, we put God in a box, right? He has to provide in this way, through this person, through these means. No. That God is provider. Bread from heaven, water from a rock. God's resources are boundless. Boundless. But we know that the physical is not the most important, as I said already. That's why we need to go beyond just the physical. And so now, Psalm 23 verse 1, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. Green pastures, now it's grass. But the grass stands for abundance. Green grass, it's in abundance. When we have no rain over at our place on North Edinburgh, everything turns brown. And I have to buy hay for the cows. But when it rains, man, I need more cows. Because it gets so green. It's an abundance. When it's green, it's just abundance. Right? Makes me lie down green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. Quiet waters are waters of refreshment and plenty to drink. Waters can be used for judgment, but waters can be used for life in the Bible. And here we have a place for nourishment to quench the thirst. He gives us everything we need, but obviously that stands for much more. But especially God leads us to places where there is plenty without trouble. Plenty without trouble. But many times we don't experience that because we're not focusing on God. We're not focusing on the deeper things, the spiritual things of God. And so we get ourselves in trouble. Psalm 23 verse 3, now we get into the non-physical here very clearly. He restores my soul. Is the soul physical? No. But it's very, very important, right? How many times have you and I have had pleasures, whether it's movies or restaurants or whatever, and then we think, okay, man, that was great, and then a few hours later, whatever, it's like, what's next? If not a few minutes later, we're bored, we want more, our soul is empty. Our soul is empty. And yet, there are other moments where our soul is filled, that we can sit quietly somewhere and be content, be happy. It's okay. It's good within my soul, you see, and it's not physical. So here he says, He restores my soul. He guides me in the path of righteousness. Is righteousness physical? No. It's what's right. And that righteousness is something that feeds our soul. It makes us whole. It clears. We have a clean conscience. It's good. You see, but it's not physical. And all of us have experienced guilt at one point or another in life, or shame, or fear, or what have you. But when there's been a walk in righteousness and there's peace, the world can be turning upside down, but it's okay. You see, He restores my soul. He leads me in the path of righteousness for His name's sake. God provides for our deepest needs, our soul's needs, the non-physical needs. And that's where you and I need to, as we get older, we need to see that more and more. Nancy and I talk about getting old together, right? And the older we get, the more we realize it better not be our looks. It better not be the style of the hair I wear. There's no hair. It better be something else. It better not be the right measurements of the body. You see. And it's sad to say that sometimes we have to go through decades before we finally learn that. And so the sooner the better that we learn that God provides for our non-physical, which is the more basic. Psalm 34, verse 6 and 7. This poor man cried, and the Lord heard him. He saved him out of all his troubles. The angel of the Lord encamped around those who fear him and rescues them. Listen. When is it that you and I cry? Either frustration or joy or whatever. Do we cry when everything's just fine and we're not worried about anything? No. We cry when there's something very, very intense going on, whether positive or negative. And in this intensity, the psalmist says, this poor man cried. The Lord heard him, right? The Lord provides deliverance for His humble who trust Him. And it's in times of intense issues of the soul. But He provides. The Lord heard him. The next page, Psalm 34 again, verse 9. Oh, fear the Lord, you His saints. For those who fear Him, there is no want. The Lord promises to provide for the needs of His own, those who greatly respect Him. Because it says, oh, fear the Lord. That is, have this intense, deep respect of God. You see, obey Him. When we respect someone deeply and strongly, we just obey because there's a deep respect for Him. And that's what it said. God provides for those that are humble and greatly respect Him. Psalm 37, verse 16 through 19. Better is a little of the righteous than the abundance of many wicked. For the arms of the wicked will be broken, but the Lord sustains the righteous. The Lord knows the days of the blameless, and their inheritance will be forever. They will not be ashamed at the time of evil. In the days of famine, they will have abundance. God will provide the position, listen to that. God will provide the position to inherit all that is needed. the longer I live, the longer I realize it's not about impressing those that are, the important people, the president, the superintendent, the whoever. No. It's about living right before God. And in due time, He's going to give us the position just to get all that we need and more. But again, that takes a shift in our thinking. Because we're so used to, I got to obey and be, do anything and everything that people tell me because, we're afraid of them instead of fearing the Lord. No, do what is right before God. And He will put you in a position to inherit all that is needed. Psalm 44:3. Psalm 44:3. For by their own sword they did not possess the land, and their own arm did not save them. But thy right hand and thine arm, and the light of thy presence, for thou didst favor them. Not our might, but the Lord is all that we need. The Lord is going to provide because He's the provider. That's the point. Right? That's the point. We wrestle and claw and get mad and angry and frustrated when we lose sight of the Lord. If things don't work out, they don't work out. I'm having to learn this even today and yesterday and since Saturday, since I lost my phone. I mean, unbelievable. Who owns an Android? Get out. I mean, I can't believe the frustrations. And I'm having to go to the Apple store and Verizon and T-Mobile and I'm like, Ruben, what's wrong with you? Aren't you supposed to trust the Lord? It's like, I guess so. But it's so easy to forget. It's so easy to forget. You see, it's not by their own sword. It's not by their own, they got saved, they got the land. No, it's by the Lord. He's the provider. Psalm 116, verse 1. I love the Lord because He hears my voice and my supplications, because He has inclined His ear to me. Therefore I shall call upon Him as long as I live. The cords of death encompass me, and the terrors of Sheol come upon me. I found distress and sorrow. Then I called upon the name of the Lord. O Lord, I beseech Thee, save my life. Gracious is the Lord and righteous. Yes, our God is compassionate. The Lord preserves the simple. I was brought low and He saved me. God provides mercy, grace, and compassion. That is salvation. You ever want somebody just to listen to you? To understand you? The beginning of this verse, that's what He means. You see? He hears my voice, my supplication, because He inclined His ear to me. God doesn't have ears. It's just to help us understand that God really listens to us. And then when we find out that He's gracious, righteous, and compassionate, see, those are non-physical things. Those are non-physical things, but they're so fundamental, so basic, so the basis of all of life. And that's who God is, and He provides those things for us. You see. Psalm 116 again, verse 7. Return to your rest, O my soul, for the Lord has dealt bountifully with you. For thou hast rescued my soul from death, my soul from tears, my feet from stumbling. I shall walk before the Lord in the land of the living. I believed when I said, I am gratefully afflicted. I said in my alarm, all men are liars. What shall I render to the Lord for all His benefits towards me? I shall lift up my cup of salvation and call upon the name of the Lord. I shall pay my vows to the Lord. Oh, may it be in the presence of all His people. Again, the psalmist cries out to the God with his distress, and God hears him and provides for him. And then he says, oh my goodness, when I was in trouble, I exaggerated things. And I was so lost, and God heard me and had compassion on me, and he took care of me. And he's going, man, God, you're so good. You are so good. You know what? I want to tell of your goodness, and I hope it's in the middle of a bunch of people. You're so good. Because he experienced the provisions of God, that God really does provide. But again, it takes times of trouble. When he says, I said, I am greatly afflicted. Again, just from my own life, sometimes I thought, man, this is so bad. I'm going to give up in life. And now I look back, it's like, what a crybaby. That wasn't bad at all. I mean, you have everything. And you were belly aching and crying about this little thing? We exaggerate when we're going through stuff. And we cry out to God, and God, takes care of us. Like, man, God is so good. God is so good. 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 10. Now he who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food will supply and multiply your seed. And here is very, 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 very important phrase that's coming up. Look at it carefully. Wait for it. For sowing an increase of harvest of your righteousness. God provides for effectiveness in his work. Here is the purpose for his provisions. That God provides for us doesn't mean, I'm going to get the jeans I want. I want to get the tennis shoes I want. I want to get the car I want. Oh, I want to get the dress I want. Oh, I'm going to take vacations. No. God provides so that then we can sow his word and righteousness comes up. See, those are the non-physical things. He uses the physical things, but for the non-physical things, God provides so that we can be involved in what he's doing. You see, so that God provides is an awesome, awesome thing, but we don't stay just with he's going to provide all the hamburgers I want for the rest of my life. I'm good. No. It's for the purpose of sowing seed so the harvest of righteousness would increase. What a change in perspective, no? Are we looking that God is a provider far more than just the physical or financial? For what purpose? 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 9, the last verse, and then we'll open it up for any questions or your comments that you might have. 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 9, but just as it is written, the things which eye has not seen, and ear has not heard, and which have not been entered into the heart of man, all that God has prepared for those who love him. We have really seen nothing yet so as to what God can provide. Again, as I get older, I realize the things that God provides far, far, far beyond the physical. In fact, the physical becomes less and less important. And there's more and more contentment. Because now I see what God really is after. What is God really after? For me and you to become more like Jesus Christ so that we can love people better. You see? So that we can give them what really, really matters. Love and the Word of God. You see? That God provides then. He does. For what we really need. But it goes far beyond the physical. He provides forgiveness and righteousness, compassion and mercy, and those things that our soul and spirit need. God is our provider.